So, yesterday evening, I was at my cousin's birthday party in the Bellevue, Redmond area here in Washington, and I carpooled with my dad and my grandmother. And as we were leaving the restaurant, we were going down to the parking garage. In the elevator, it was me, my father, my grandmother, an older couple, and a younger couple, so 7 people in total. And as we're on our way down to the parking garage, the older woman asks her husband how he enjoyed the salmon in the middle of, by the way, a crowded elevator. And the husband, not rudely or dismissively, but just kind of says to her, yeah, I enjoyed it, but not giving her a whole lot of attention, obviously not wanting to make a scene or have a loud conversation in the middle of this packed elevator. And this woman swats him on his arm as hard as she could and gives him a very rude look after. And the whole elevator, including myself, is in shock. And he just looks at her submissively and says, yeah, I really enjoyed the salmon. Now, walking out of the elevator, I couldn't believe my eyes, but in many ways I'm not surprised because this kind of stuff is way too common. This kind of stuff happens a lot. And now, imagine this. She's doing that in front of a crowded elevator with people in it, in public. I could only imagine what this relationship, marriage is like in private. I don't even want to think about it. I really feel sorry for the guy. And when it comes to things like disrespect, because as men, we've always, I shouldn't say always, right? But we have all put up with some form of disrespect in our life. For example, recently I was calling a local business and asking some general questions, and the person over the phone was very rude, quite rude. And I remember after I'd gotten off the phone call, you guys have probably felt this. I think this is not an unusual feeling, but in the back of my mind, thinking that I want to call him back or give him my peace of mind, quite frankly. But you look at things like that and you think logically and you just think, what's even the point? It's better just to walk away. There's no point of calling that business back, whether the person was having a bad day, whether they're just like that, whatever it might be. It is not worth compromising your peace of mind and getting upset over something like that. Now, that was a small example. There are things where you need to call them out or certainly do not allow them to happen. Like this husband with his wife in the elevator. The fact that so many men will tolerate that in a relationship is sad. It's why videos like this, it's why I'm a big proponent in having young men especially, but men in general, not have to repeat the mistakes of older men or generations before them, where they can see things and get the discernment and learn from those things. Now, with this case of the elevator, it's Bellevue, Washington, so I'm sure this salmon dinner was 3 times the price that it normally would. I would imagine the husband probably paid for it, all to be disrespected. And for a woman to think that that is an acceptable way to handle yourself in public or private is absolutely ridiculous. But a lot of the problems I see, and it's not just younger women, by the way. As I mentioned, this couple in the elevator were older, probably in their 50s or 60s. It's not just the younger women. I will say younger women's problems tend to be what they prioritize and do not prioritize in relationships, which when they're in their 20s, I mean, let's be upfront, let's be honest, it is just status, it is just validation, it is attention. They won't want to settle down, and all the good men who are interested in them, they'll be dismissive of them, either for image and what their friends think, even just having this image of being strong and independent. They are starting to realize how detrimental these mindsets are. But some of them, I think, are so stuck in their ways that they know it's detrimental, but they will do it anyway. For example, you could have a girl in her 20s, and she could see a guy who's on the right track, whether he started his own business, whether he's doing really well in trades. I mean, I know people, I'm not sure what the trades are now, but many years ago, I knew someone who was in his 20s. He was a plumber making upwards of $200,000 a year. People going to school to become doctors, to become lawyers. A woman will look at a guy like that in her 20s and think that he's boring. Would rather want to get with the guy who has some kind of social media status or a few 100,000 followers on social media. Even though they know it's not going to lead to anywhere serious, because they want to live it up when they are single, when they are younger, because that's what all their friends tell them to do. That's what social media has told them to do. And it's not going to lead anywhere. Even my friend Devin recently reacted to a video of a woman who's 39 years old going on a date with a 30-year-old man, which I don't want to repeat what he said in the video. He pointed it out very well, but that guy is just taking her because she's easy, basically. And I'm, of course, against the casual stuff, but we know it's not going to lead anywhere serious. He knows it's not going to lead anywhere serious. You cannot have a family. At least it's extremely unlikely that he's going to have a family and have kids with a woman who is almost a decade older than him, right? And I'll tell you something right now. If there are men that like older women, fine. I know men that like older women. But for me personally, there are some things that I like better vintage, like, for example, classic movies and video games and cars and old vintage architecture, things like park benches and lights and stuff like that, street lights. But when it comes to dating, you couldn't pay me to get with an older woman because, again, it is not going to lead anywhere seriously. And you have a lot of men who are wasting their time with women like this. But the real sad thing, and why I'm wanting to mention this video that my friend reacted to, is in the video, she was acting like she was 16 years old. The tone of her voice, the way she was talking, about the date. And she said something that really stood out, was that her goal of this was to have kids. A 39-year-old woman, by the way. What was she doing for the past 20 years? And that's my question to any woman in that position. Now, I understand there are cases of widows. I understand there are women who maybe were with guys that were maybe cheat on them. I'm not saying that every man is perfect. I'm not saying a guy cannot be toxic. I'm not saying that at all. But most of the time, quite frankly, an overwhelming majority of the time that I've seen and I'm aware of, it is not those cases. It is not. It is the woman buying into this mindset. And for a woman to be 39 years old and act that way and talk that way, and then to think you're going to have kids and a family, it is absolutely ridiculous. I see a lot of men who have made this mistake, though, sadly, of getting with older women like this. I know someone personally who was 27 years old, got with a woman who was 35. Again, same reason, because she's easy. And a lot of the women who are in their 20s, like I mentioned, have these, I can't even call them standards, really delusions, these unrealistic standards of what they want in a relationship and are not looking to settle down. And he gets with this older woman, and what he gets in return is 18 years of child support. And I don't want to see any man in that position. I do not want to see any man make that mistake. That is why discernment is so important. But even recently, just with this whole, I was thinking about this a while back with this whole independent mindset. We don't need men mindset. And with men walking away. A while back, I did a food delivery order to a woman who was blind, and she had in the instructions of the delivery to go up to the door and knock on her door and hand her the food versus just leaving at the door and taking a picture like you normally would. And to not have me do those steps would not only lack common sense, but it would be just irrational, right? And with this whole experience, not only does that put into perspective the things we sometimes take for granted, like eyesight and things we have no idea that other people are struggling with or don't have, but to think that you can take a man's place in a relationship or really in society and don't need them is irrational and lacks common sense. Just like if this woman were to say, oh yeah, leave it at the door and send a picture because I want to be empowered, I want to be independent, I want to be strong. It would not make any sense. And I felt bad for that woman. Really, I felt bad for that woman. But even recently, I was going on a walk, and sometimes I'll go on walks in the morning, but this is around 5 in the morning. And when you go to the grocery store at 5 in the morning, by the way, there's one that's walking distance from my house. If the cashier says good night, you know that they were working all night in their graveyard shift. And if they say good morning, you know they just started. But either way, they're probably sleep deprived, right? So I was at the grocery store, and as I was walking home, I happened to pass by a retirement home. A lot of old folks, obviously, around the building. And I was thinking to myself, when I see women with this kind of mindset, which is where they're going to end up, do you want to be, and this is for any, if there's good women watching this video or not, do you want to be in your 60s, in your 70s, in your 80s even, alone at the dinner table, with no kids, with no grandkids, with no husband? Because that is where you are going to end up. And I understand things like affordability, again, like I mentioned. You want to talk about expensive, Seattle, West Coast, Bellevue, Redmond, some of the most expensive zip codes in the country. I understand that. I understand that there are things that both men and women are struggling with right now. But the problem is, in my opinion, more than just financial. And I believe that does apply to some cases. I'm not taking that away from anyone. But ultimately what it comes down to is the behavior of women in particular. And when it comes to men's behavior too, like I said, I don't condone someone dating older women because it's not going to lead anywhere serious. I don't support any of the casual stuff. I've had friends of mine who struggle with lust, a battle that has destroyed many men throughout history. But I've had friends of mine who have struggled with lust, who engage in things like the women I talk about, in their 20s going to nightclubs and raves, and these people around the age of 30 still doing those things, which they should not be doing. But I have had conversations with them many times about how problematic lust is versus I see women, the so-called sisterhood, enabling one another, enabling that kind of behavior. Even I was at the mall recently, and there was a group of women that was in front of me who were dressed very revealing, almost like they were in one of those nightclubs and they were walking around the mall. And you'd think a woman should not be leaving the house dressed like that. I don't need to go into detail about what I mean by that, by the way. But there was a group of girls who walked towards them from the opposite side of the sidewalk outside the mall. And they were giving them all these compliments, saying, you look so good, all this kind of stuff, really just enabling that kind of behavior, celebrating that kind of stuff. When men, for the most part, at least if they're your real friends, they're going to have those kind of hard conversations to try to help one another, to not try to enable that kind of behavior. If someone's enabling that or just being a yes man, that's not a real friend. That's not someone who says yes all the time, even if it's something that is objectively detrimental, is not your friend. That's not behaving in a good way. But I truly don't see that kind of accountability. Not from what I've seen, not from what I've heard as well. And I want to say something too. The people that I've heard, funny enough, complain about women more than anyone is actually other women, not men, by the way. Because a lot of men are walking away. They're doing their own thing. They're in a place right now where they're going to the gym. They're starting a business. They're working towards getting into starting a business. They are going to college. They're getting into jobs, into trades. The people I see really complaining about women are other women. And you could talk about this in friendships and relationships, the jealousy, the envy out there, these kind of fake friend circles that I see and that I've heard of. They seem to be the biggest critics. So that should tell you something right there. They're the ones who spend the most time around them generally, right? Yet they're the ones that seem to, understandably, complain the most. So there's something going on. I've heard a lot of older women too, even women who have emailed me directly, who are older, previous generations, saying how they can't believe the behavior and entitlement, really, of women in their 20s now. And they're not wrong. They are not wrong one bit because we all see it. We all see the same exact thing. I think a lot of women have been propped up with this idea that they can just get away with anything with being enabled, and that they're going to be able to just redeem themselves by getting that dream man, which if you look at a lot of the movies too, a lot of these films that I think a lot of women watch growing up, including novelizations, romance novels and stuff like that, based on the man chasing the woman and the woman being the prize, right? When a man is not going to want a woman who has such a past, who has done all these things to themselves, who has all this baggage, that's not going to be the prize at the end of the day, at the end of the story. It's not going to happen. You can't behave like that and then think you're going to have this kind of movie-esque reality. It's not going to work. First of all, it's a movie. It's not real life. But something I've been seeing for a while now, and I don't know what it's going to take, but all I can really do is say, for the men out there watching, to have the discernment, to not fall for this trap of allowing not just women, but anyone into your life because of this idea that a big social circle is success. I think that's a thing of the past now. I mean, there's so many people I've cut off. My whole 20s was really clearing house, if you will. But again, guys, I appreciate you for viewing the video as always. Hope you guys have a good one. Thank you.